Fantasy fanfiction. Take Sharingan on a great voyage. Chapter 31. Seeing that Luo Yun was silent, the strong man added, "If you were a few years older, I would definitely not be your opponent, but now you are just a kid. With devil fruit, you can exert some strength. Kid, it's just your bad luck that you encountered this kind of thing. If it were normal times, I might give you a chance to join CP Cipher Pull, but today, you can only die." In the strong man's opinion, these brats will definitely die today, and he doesn't care to say more, as dead people will never reveal secrets. Depend on. Luo Yun was dumbfounded for a moment, thinking that these men in black were CP Cipher Pull, which meant that these people were not killers, but people from the government. But judging from their attire, it is obvious that they are not CP espionage personnel on the surface. They should be doing shady things for the government secretly. Luo Yun no longer knows what to say about his bad luck. He encountered CP Cipher Pull and killed someone, and now he is still involved in it. Luo Yun doesn't want to go against CP Cipher Pull yet. It's not that he's afraid, it's just that facing CP Cipher Pull with his current strength is completely courting death. But the current situation is obviously not something he has thought about. The other party is obviously determined to kill these people. If he wants to live, he can only kill these people. Since they are spies of CP Cipher Pull, we cannot let one of them go, otherwise they will be in endless trouble and the dojo will be involved. Killing intent flashed in his eyes, and Luo Yun felt determined to kill. The strong man had climbed out of life and death. He felt the murderous intention in Luo Yun's heart and immediately said with a disdainful smile, "You kid, you still want to kill me. You will know if you can kill or not, you will know if you try." This was the first time Luo Yun spoke, and his tone was murderous. "Looking for death, kid." The strong man was enraged, shouted angrily, stepped out, swung his long knife and slashed down in the air, the long knife word as it cut through the air. It has to be said that as the boss, the strong man is indeed much stronger than the other killers. This sword is extremely fast, but now that Luo Yun has activated Sharingan, the strong man's speed is broken, but in Luo Yun's eyes, it is extremely slow. He lightly stepped his right foot to the left, and easily dodged the strong man's sword on one side of his body. Bang! The long knife fell to the ground, cutting a crack into the ground, and dust and smoke flew up. Seeing Luo Yun dodge, the strong man flipped his wrist and swung his long sword upwards. Luo Yun quickly raised his sword to block it. There was a sharp clang sound and fire was radiating. The long sword sank with great force and slashed Luo Yun away with one strike. His feet rubbed against the ground, and two parallel scratches appeared under his feet. He stepped back 4 to 5 meters, and Luo Yun stepped hard with both feet to steady his steps. What a powerful force! Loosening his hands to relieve the pain in the tiger's mouth and 2 arms, Luo Yun was secretly shocked. The strength of this strong man was comparable to that of 2 adults. Although after this period of high-intensity physical training, his strength far exceeds that of his peers, and is no worse than an adult, but it is still worse than a strong man. It seems that we can't fight head-on. We can only win by relying on speed and skill. Luo Yun was knocked back with one blow. The strong man stepped hard on the ground with both feet and shot out. He swung the long knife and struck Luo Yun's head. This was to get straight to Luo Yun's head. Luo Yun quickly retreated, but the strong man was faster than him. He caught up with him in a blink of an eye and dropped the long knife. Seeing the long knife slashing down with strong wind, Luo Yun didn't panic, raised his right foot high, kicked the strong man in the abdomen, and kicked the strong man several steps away. He stepped on his left foot at the same time and rushed out. The sharp sword in his hand flashed and he stabbed the strong man upright. Flash sword. The wrist shook rapidly at an irregular speed, causing the long sword to shake as well, and more than a dozen sword shadows seemed to appear in the void. The strong man quickly retreated, but the long sword came close to him. The strong man couldn't tell which sword shadow was real and which sword shadow was fake. In anger, he slashed down with the long sword in his hand, and the sword shadows shattered. But he didn't hit the real sword. Tear. Blood flew up, and the long sword left a wound of 10 centimeters on the strong man's shoulder. Luo Yun did not take the opportunity to continue attacking, and quickly stepped back, because the strong man's long sword had already struck backhand. Die. Sharingan had already locked onto the trajectory of the long sword strike, and Luo Yun narrowly dodged it by tilting her head, and a strand of broken long black hair fell from the top of her head. But Luo Yun dodged the strong man's sword and failed to avoid the strong man's fist. The fist landed on Luo Yun's shoulder, making a heavy muffled sound, and knocked Luo Yun away with one punch. After taking several steps back, Luo Yun stabilized his body. His left shoulder was in severe pain, and he couldn't even lift it. With a child's frame, he couldn't withstand a strong punch from a strong man, and his left hand was immediately disabled. Several long knives are coming. At the same time, he slashed at Kuina, who was in danger. However, Kuina didn't panic, stood up on her toes, rotated her body, and swept out the long sword in her hand. Swish! In an instant, Kuina swung several swords to repel all the killers. She tapped her toes and stepped forward, approaching one of the killers. He swung his sword and slashed, and the opponent reacted quickly and quickly raised the sword in his hands to block. But the moment Kuina was about to hit the sword, he suddenly changed his move. The vertical slash was changed to a horizontal slash, and the sword slid out to the right against the blade's edge. Sizzling. The fire was radiating, and the long sword slid down from the blade, taking advantage of the momentum to cut off the killer's left arm. The killer howled in pain, turned pale, and quickly backed away, trying to escape. Don't even think about escaping. Kuina was simmering with anger in her heart at this moment. She shouted loudly, caught up with him and raised his hand to kill the opponent directly with a sword. At this time, the remaining killers who had been repelled approached and attacked Kuina with their swords whistling. The killers also knew at this time that Kuina was as terrifying as the kid. In a short period of time, 2 of her companions were killed. He immediately put out 120% of his energy and went all out to deal with Kuina. The 4 killers cooperated with each other and struck continuously. Even though Kuina had strong swordsmanship, she was forced to retreat continuously. But it was not a dangerous situation. Kuina barely resisted the attacks of several people, waiting for the opponent to reveal his flaw and kill him with one move. The 4 of them surrounded the carriage, facing the 4 killers. After all, Jace and Ike were just children. Even with the addition of 2 adult apprentices, they were still no match for the 4 killers, and the situation was full of dangers. Facing the pressure of death, coupled with the fact that Luo Yun and Kuina had killed 2 killers in seconds, courage was inspired in several people. It's not like they will be defeated so quickly. As long as Luo Yun and Kuina get out of the way, the balance of victory will tilt in their favor. File, file, file. The swords collided, with a metallic clang and fire. Kuina fought and retreated. As time went by, the swordsmanship learned over the years became more and more proficient in the face of life and death oppression and fierce battles. Gradually, Kuina began to be able to handle it with ease. While blocking the attacks of 4 people, he could also launch 2 counterattacks from time to time, forcing the 4 killers to panic. If they hadn't cooperated with each other tacitly, their joint effort would have been broken by Kuina. Even so, from now on, Kuina's final victory is only a matter of time. The killers on the opposite side naturally felt Kuina's progress. During the fight with them, the swordsmanship of the little girl in front of them changed from being unfamiliar at the beginning to becoming smoother and faster. If this continues, the 4 of them may not be able to suppress this female brat. The 4 of them were anxious and looked at each other to communicate, and the 4 of them worked harder to suppress Kuina. But Kuina mastered the swordsmanship in the battle and made rapid progress. Even with the added strength of 4 people, they couldn't suppress Kuina. Instead, they gradually pushed Kuina to her limits. The 4 killers became Kuina's whetstones, and they sharpened Kuina's sword. The other side. Luo Yun was knocked back by the strong man's punch. His left shoulder was in so much pain that he couldn't even lift his hand and was almost disabled. Looking down at the injury on his shoulder, the strong man snorted lightly, looking unconcerned. This injury was nothing to him. Looking up, he saw Luo Yun's left hand hanging down. The strong man sneered, "Kid, as a swordsman, what else can you do if you lose one hand?" "I have plenty of tricks." Luo Yun replied. His momentum was not bad at all. But he is not so energetic in his heart. Losing one hand will have a huge impact on him. Although he is an Ito Ryu and can hold a sword with one right hand, there is a big difference between using a sword with 2 hands and using one hand. A big difference will greatly affect the use of moves. This strong man is experienced at first sight, and his attacks are aimed at his weak points. When ordinary people are injured, their first reaction is to retreat, but his first reaction is to fight back, exchanging injuries for injuries. Only people who often lick blood from their swords would do this. Really, it depends on your ability. Judging from the fight just now, your ability should be paramesha, and the key to your ability lies in these eyes. If there was a trick, you would have used it just now instead of using swordsmanship all the time. Zhuang Han analyzed lightly. He looked confident, as if he had taken control of the situation and had victory in his hands. Luo Yun didn't speak. No matter what he said at this time, it was nonsense. He rushed forward quickly, focused on the attack, jumped up, and volleyed over the head of the strong man. The long sword in his hand was released, and he held the hilt with his backhand, falling from the sky and stabbing the strong man in the head. The strong man sneered, swung his sword and swept it towards Luo Yun. Sharingan activated, Luo Yun found the strong man's flaw, and the long sword flipped and spun again, slashing the strong man's wrist at an extremely tricky angle that could not be defended, severing the arteries. Blood spurted out like a broken water pipe, and the strong man subconsciously pulled his hand away from the pain. How could Luo Yun give up this great opportunity? He slashed at the strong man's neck with his sword, hoping to kill the strong man with one move. Unexpectedly, when he saw the long sword coming, the strong man not only did not dodge, but smiled and said, "Kid, you have too little experience, you fell into the trap." After the words fell, the strong man picked up the long knife with his right hand and swung it upward suddenly. When Luo Yun saw the other party laughing, he already felt something was wrong and quickly backed away, but it was still too late. The long knife struck. Luo Yun made a move to hold the sword to block it, but with only one right hand, his strength was too much. Clang! With a startling sound and flames blazing, the long sword came out of Luo Yun's hand, spun more than 10 times like a windmill, and fell upside down on the ground. Luo Yun's tiger's mouth cracked with great force, blood stained the entire palm, and the pain was extremely painful. "Die, kid." Unexpectedly, the strong man ignored the broken blood vessels in his left wrist and the blood surged wildly, and attacked with a knife, intending to kill him here first. At this moment, the ferocity of the strong man inspired the cruelty in Luo Yun's heart. "Come on, who is afraid of whom? Either you die or I die, one of us must die here." Raising his hand and taking out a shuriken, Luo Yun did not launch it immediately, he was a little hesitant. He still hasn't mastered this move, and sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't work. Forget it at normal times, but at this moment, if it doesn't work, it will be gone. If you don't use this trick, there are no other tricks. Let's give it a try. Gritting his teeth, Luo Yun Sharingan locked the trajectory of the strong man, and immediately raised his hand to shoot the shuriken, like a black lightning shot straight to the strong man's forehead. In the flash of lightning, the strong man tilted his head and dodged Luo Yun's shuriken. The strong man smiled proudly and said, "Kid, do you think I didn't guard against your shuriken? Now let's see what other tricks you have. Who says I can't do anything?" Luo Yun raised his head and smiled proudly. He held his right hand in the air and pulled it back suddenly. I saw the flying shuriken suddenly separated from the middle, and the 5 sharp corners of the shuriken split into 5 small shurikens. The tails of these 5 small shurikens were tied with an extremely thin, almost invisible to the naked eye. Thin threads, the other end of these threads was held in Luo Yun's hand. When Luo Yun pulled back, the silk thread pulled the shuriken, and the shuriken flying forward was pulled by the thin thread and flew backward. Do shuriken. Seeing the smug smile on Luo Yun's face at the moment of death, the strong man was stunned for a moment. Does this kid have any other tricks? No matter what tricks he has, kill him first. This kid is a bit evil. I don't know if I keep him. Something happened. Thinking that the strong man no longer hesitated, he swung his sword and was about to kill Luo Yun. Suddenly he heard several sounds of breaking through the air from behind. The strong man subconsciously looked back. When he turned around, he saw 5 small shurikens flying towards him. The strong man was stunned and his face was full of disbelief. How could there be shurikens? Didn't he avoid the shurikens? At this time, everyone was fighting, and the shuriken flying from behind came from nowhere. But the shuriken obviously wouldn't tell him this answer. The 5 shurikens came at him like 5 black snakes. At such a close range, all 5 shurikens hit the strong man. 2 shurikens hit the strong man's left shoulder, 1 shuriken hit the strong man's back, 1 shuriken hit the back of the strong man's head, and the most important one hit the strong man's neck. Plop! The strong man stood upright like a hard stick and fell down, raising a puff of dust and smoke. The fallen strong man did not die immediately. He pointed with difficulty to the shuriken stuck on his shoulder and shouted with his last strength. Why? Luo Yun's blood-stained right hand dragged his left hand, and he staggered up to the strong man and said, "Before I die, I will let you understand what is going on." As he spoke, Luo Yun pulled hard with his right hand, and the 3 shurikens on the strong man's shoulders flew out and hung in the air. Under the reflection of the sun, the strong man lying on the ground finally saw the thin line behind the shuriken. At this moment, the strong man finally closed his eyes in understanding. He died unjustly. Phew. Seeing that the strong man was completely dead, Luo Yun finally stopped holding back and opened his mouth to spit out the blood accumulated in his chest. After spitting out the blood, Luo Yun's face immediately turned pale, but then turned rosy, and his breathing gradually became calmer. The other side. While Kuina was dealing with the 4 killers, her attention was distracted and staring at the other 2 sides. Seeing that Luo Yun was about to die at the hands of the strong man, Kuina subconsciously wanted to go over and support him. But with this move, Kuina suddenly revealed a flaw. How could the 4 killers miss this great opportunity? The 4 of them shouted in unison. Kill! With shouts of kill, the 4 of them slashed at Kuina from all sides with their swords. The sword flashed, blocking Kuina's retreat, leaving Kuina with nowhere to escape. With a little more force on her toes, Kuina jumped into the air and dodged the attacks of 4 broadswords. Luo Fengjian. With a shout, Kuina leapt to a certain height and fell from the sky. This is Kuina's strongest move. Luo Yun was defeated by this move in the past. He leapt in the air and then swooped down. Using gravity to increase his speed and strength, his sword moves became more flexible and changeable. It vaguely looked like a flying sword. It is a phoenix bird, so it is also called Luo Fengjian. It was extremely powerful and the sword moves were unpredictable. Even if Luo Yun had a Sharingan, he couldn't see it clearly and tried his best to block it. Kuina and the killer figure passed each other, and with a flash of sword light, the killer's head fell to the ground, and his body collapsed to the ground. After killing a killer with 1 blow, Kuina put her toes on the ground, took advantage of the situation to spin, and swept out her long sword. Immediately there were 3 landing sounds, and the other 3 killers fell to the ground as soft as noodles, and the long knives in their hands fell. The wounds on the 3 of them were the same, all on their necks. The blood marks slowly separated and blood surged wildly. Looking at the 4 dead killers, blood seeped out from the corner of Kuina's mouth, and her face turned pale. But he couldn't stop the proud smile on his face, looking up at the sword covered in blood. He said to himself, I didn't expect the new move to be so powerful. Let's call this move, Phoenix Tail Swing. Phew. Opening his mouth to spit out the suppressed blood, Luo Yun raised his hand to wipe the bloodline from the corner of his mouth. Covered in blood, he looked down at the dead strong man and laughed. With an arrogant laugh and a hint of madness, he said, if you want to kill me, you are not enough. Lousy is the protagonist from time travel. Do you know what a protagonist is? Idiot. After venting his emotions, Luo Yun immediately released a lot of the negative feelings accumulated in his heart after killing someone for the first time. This kind of thing seems to have no impact. But if you don't release it, it will remain accumulated in your mind, which is a big problem for your mentality. He collapsed on the ground with a plop. His whole body was sore now, and he didn't want to move. It was impossible to support Jace and the others. Fortunately, Kuina also defeated her opponent. Seeing Kuina's last move with a sword and turning around to fight back, Luo Yun's face changed slightly, and he couldn't help but sigh at how strong he was. The sword slashed out without any warning, and the enemy had no time to react, killing 3 people instantly, all with 1 move on the same wound. Kuina has become stronger. After a battle, Kuina's sword moves can be performed smoothly and without any obstruction. It would have been impossible for Kuina to perform such moves so smoothly. Sure enough, fighting is the most motivating thing. Kuina has been practicing sword practice for 7 years since she was 3 years old. Today's battle will refine Kuina's 7 years of sword practice, eliminating the dross and leaving the essence. After this battle, Kuina will become stronger at a rapid speed, just by accumulating time and effort. It seems that it may be impossible to defeat Kuina next, and there is a long way to go. After dealing with the opponent, Kuina looked towards Luo Yun and found that Luo Yun had already dealt with the strong leader, but was seriously injured. At this time, Luo Yun shouted, "I just can't hold on anymore, please go over and help." Okay. Kuina turned around and saw that the 4 people in Ichi's were all injured and had been forced to the foot of the car. If this continued, within half a minute, the 4 of them would be dead. He immediately flew forward and thrust out the long sword in his hand to block the sword of a killer who was about to hit Ike. The long sword danced like a spiritual snake, and the sword shadows danced all over the sky. Kuina slashed through the killer's chest with one sword, causing flesh and blood to flow freely. Blood surged wildly. The killer fell to the ground, struggled for a while, and died completely with his legs shaking. After saving Ike, Kuina turned back and stabbed the killer who was dealing with Jace. The killer quickly dodged and avoided Kuina's sword. At this time, the only 3 remaining killers also found that except for the 3 of them, the others were all dead. They were frightened. They had no desire to fight again. They looked at each other, turned around and ran away. Call out. 2 shurikens were fired, and one hit a killer on the forehead. The killer died immediately. Under the inertia of running forward, his body took another 2 steps forward before falling to the ground. Another killer was shot in the knee, and fell to his knees with a pop. Luo Yun was seriously injured, and his accuracy was quite poor, with one of his 2 shurikens hitting the target. Kuina originally saw that the 3 killers wanted to retreat, so she had no intention of continuing the pursuit, but Luo Yun suddenly stopped the killers. Kuina looked at Luo Yun in shock and confusion. The bright eyes seemed to be asking Luo Yun why he wanted to kill these killers who were trying to escape. Seeing that the 3rd killer was running away, Luo Yun lost track of him. Where did he have time to explain so much? He shouted anxiously, "Kuina, leave the 3rd one behind." Seeing how anxious Luo Yun was, Kuina hesitated and jumped out, chasing the 3rd killer. Being able to survive this time can be said to be due to Luo Yun. Without him, all of them would have died here. Since Luo Yun said that he would keep all the killers, he naturally had his intention. Unknowingly, Kuina didn't realize that she already had basic trust in Luo Yun. Although she would hesitate when Luo Yun spoke, she would still follow Luo Yun's wishes. Ji Yu Yina quickly caught up with the 3rd killer, silver light burst out, and sword shadows danced all over the sky. The killer persisted for more than 10 moves before he was killed by Kuina at his feet. His blood dyed the white snow under his feet red. Seeing that the 3rd killer was also killed by Kuina, Luo Yun breathed a sigh of relief. These people are all CP Cypher Pole killers. If any of them escape, what happened today will be leaked, and then they will face CP Cypher Pole. Pursuit and revenge. Isshin Dojo will inevitably be involved when the time comes. Although Koshiro is strong, but the opponent's CP is Cypher Pole who relies on the world government, and the final result is really hard to say. After a long rest, Luo Yun walked up to the only killer who was still alive, and Kuina also stepped back. Just as he was about to ask Luo Yun why, Luo Yun ignored the killer's plea for mercy and pierced the killer's throat with a sword. Blood splattered all over Luo Yun's face. Seeing Luo Yun kill the last killer without saying a word, Kuina was shocked and immediately asked Luo Yun, "Why did you kill these people? They all ran away, why did you kill them? Why?" Luo Yun repeated the sentence, turned around and found a place to sit down, looked up at Kuina, and chuckled, "If we don't kill them, we will be the ones who die. But we have already won, defeated them all." Kuina waved her hands and shouted, "What's the use of defeating him?" Luo Yun asked Kuina, and Kuina was speechless. Luo Yun added, "Looking at the way these people act, they are organized and orderly. They are professional killers at first glance. There must be an organization behind such people. If any of them escape, please report what happened today. When the time comes, not only us but also the dojo and everyone will face their revenge." Kuina's face changed drastically. She was still young and had never thought that far ahead. When she thought of a powerful obstacle that would deal with everyone in the dojo, that scene, just thinking about it, Kuina felt a chill rising from her heels. For our safety, for the safety of everyone, we must kill them and prevent today's events from being leaked, including us. Once leaked, it will be dangerous not only to ourselves, but also to our friends and family. Life will be in danger. Luo Yun continued. He glanced at everyone and stated the seriousness of the matter, just to remind these people who had not experienced many ups and downs in life, and asked them to keep it secret. CP Cipher Pol is Cipher Pol under the world government. Their power is too strong. There are really not many forces in the world that can ignore them. Kuina didn't say anything anymore. She was not stupid. As soon as Luo Yun said it, she understood the seriousness of the matter. After taking a few breaths, Luo Yun looked at the corpses strewn on the ground and ordered to Jifan, carry all the corpses together and burn them on fire. After tonight, everything will be buried in the snow, under. With what Luo Yun said just now, no one objected to Luo Yun's decision. The seriously injured Jace, Ike, and Luo Yun were all lying down to rest. They didn't even have the strength to move. Only Kuina and 2 adult apprentices had the strength. Kuina had to help stop the bleeding of the girl on the grain truck, and it was left to the 2 adult apprentices to carry the corpses. Fortunately, the corpses were not far apart, so it took a while. "Hey, are you okay?" Luo Yun asked with concern after calling to Kuina, who was about to climb into the car. Faced with being surrounded by multiple killers, Kuina won the final victory, but she was also injured. Her arms and right calf were slashed, and Kuina now walks with a limp. Fortunately, it's not a big problem, Kuina said calmly and climbed on top of the carriage. After being rejected, Luo Yun shrugged. He was used to Kuina's aloofness, and it was rare to be able to respond to him now. After a while, the 14 corpses were piled into a small queue. The 2 apprentices poured the oil they carried with them on the pile of corpses, and Luo Yun lit the fire. The fire was rising, and there was oil. Even in winter, the fire burned very quickly, and the body and the surrounding area were burned to ashes. But after tonight, a heavy snow will fall, and all traces will be hidden under the white snow, and no one will find these ashes. When the snow melts next spring, under the irrigation of these ashes, the grass seeds in the ground will grow more lush than in nearby places. Okay, let's go. After checking that everything was taken care of, Luo Yun shouted and everyone got on the carriage and drove the carriage back. Due to the delay caused by this matter, it was already dark when Luo Yun and the others returned to Shimotsuki village. The cold wind was howling and the snow was flying. There was no one outside the village. Everyone was hiding in the heated rooms. This is just right, as it saves them from having to find a way to hide when they enter the village. Who knows how big a sensation they will cause if they enter the village one by one with injuries. After passing the village, we finally arrived at the Isshin dojo on the hillside at the end of the village. It was so late, and there was only light in a few places in the dojo. There were 2 lanterns at the gate swaying in the cold wind. After parking the carriage, Luo Yun jumped out of the carriage, scratching his body and grinning in pain. Gritting his teeth and enduring the pain, Luo Yun came to the door and patted the door hard. The door opened immediately, and a sleepy apprentice emerged. Luo Yun. Seeing that it was Luo Yun, he woke up instantly and was about to show a happy smile on his face, but he was shocked when he saw that Luo Yun was covered in blood. Frightened, he turned around and ran towards the courtyard, shouting into the lighted room inside, Owner, Luo Yun and the others are back, but they are covered in blood and all of them have injuries." Before the words were blown away in the cold wind, Koshiro walked out in pajamas, his brows furrowed and his gentle smile was gone. Without saying a word, he immediately walked towards the door with a worried look on his face. Outside the door, Luo Yun heard the shouting inside and turned around to call everyone to come down. He and Kuina entered the dojo first. Ike and Jace walked behind each other, supporting each other. An adult apprentice followed behind, supporting the seriously injured girl. When Koshiro came to the door, Luo Yun and Kuina happened to cross the door with blood and injuries on their bodies. Koshiro's brows were already furrowed and he immediately quickened his pace and reached out to support Kuina and Luo Yun. "Master, something happened on the road. We were attacked by bandits," Luo Yun raised his head and said. There are many people talking in the dojo, and they all have injuries. It is impossible to hide them. But if there are many people talking, who knows whether it will be leaked. So on the way back, everyone agreed to say that they were attacked by bandits on the road, and the girl was also attacked by bandits. Everyone fought off the bandits, and seeing that the girl was seriously injured, they brought the girl back for treatment. Don't talk yet. Let's talk after we get in. After speaking out to stop Luo Yun, Koshiro walked into the room holding one in each hand. The apprentices panicked, shouting, alarmed not only Koshiro, but also the other apprentices who were also worried about Luo Yun and others, including Zoro, who had not slept much. They also ran out and saw Luo Yun and others who were going to buy food, all injured. They were also shocked, and at the same time they were curious about what happened to Luo Yun and the others on the way to buy food, and why everyone was injured. Zoro stood in front of the crowd. He was the first one to rush out. When he saw injured Luo Yun and Kuina, Zoro ran to Luo Yun in a few steps. What happened to you guys? Luo Yun, Zoro asked urgently. Luo Yun looked at Zoro and smiled bitterly. Kaido, I'll tell you when I get in. The injured people were helped into the room, including the seriously injured girl. The other apprentices were ordered by Koshiro to move the food to the granary, leaving only Zoro and the injured Luo Yun in the room. It was snowing heavily outside, and many apprentices worked together to quickly move the grain into the granary. 3 carriages were also pulled to the stables by dedicated personnel to feed them with grain and grass. The room is as warm as spring. Koshiro is treating the injuries of the injured Luo Yun and others. As the owner of the field, he is skilled in kendo and is also a doctor with good medical skills. The apprentices in the kendo hall fight against each other, and the attacks are not serious or serious. Injuries are inevitable, and Koshiro handles them. While bandaging Kuina, Koshiro lowered his head and asked, Luo Yun, can you tell me now what's going on? Zoro looked at Luo Yun with curiosity. If Koshiro hadn't been there, he would have been unable to hold back and asked. People like Luo Yun went out fine, but when they came back, everyone was seriously injured. Even Luo Yun and Kuina were seriously injured. It looked like they had gone through a fierce battle. As for the bandit attack, Zoro didn't believe it. Although there were 6 of Luo Yun and the others, each of them had been practicing in the dojo for several years. It was not a problem to deal with ordinary people. What's more, with Kuina and Luo Yun here, ordinary bandits were no match for them. Bandits couldn't hurt them like this. Luo Yun had nothing to hide from Koshiro and had to explain everything to Koshiro. So Luo Yun bought them food from the town, and because of the ban, they ate the dry food they carried with them not far from the town. Then the girl's body fell from the sky, and the killers appeared and killed everyone. They were forced to fight back in desperation, killing everyone. Killer. Luo Yun recounted everything in detail without hiding anything. One was because there was no need to hide, and the other was that everyone watched what happened, so he couldn't hide anything. Koshiro didn't speak, just listened quietly, but the more he listened, the more he frowned. And Zoro clenched his hands into fists as he listened, with both annoyance and regret on his face. If he had known that something like this would happen, he should have followed up anyway and fought with a group of killers. What a great opportunity for actual combat. If it were another apprentice who heard what happened, his first reaction would be to be glad that he was not chosen to buy food. But Zoro is different. Far from being timid, Zoro dares to fight, is warlike, and will fight in every battle. Especially with Kuina and Luo Yun pressing down on him, Zoro worked hard to become stronger every day just to be able to defeat these 2 people. After this battle, Kuina and Luo Yun will definitely improve rapidly. Zoro understands this very well, and the gap between him and them is likely to widen even further. This is why Zoro is so upset and regretful. Not talking about Zoro, Koshiro said after listening, Luo Yun, you are right. Those people cannot escape. If one escapes, there will be endless disasters. Kuina felt a little decadent when she heard her father's praise. Her father usually greeted people with a smile, but he was very strict and rarely praised others. She has only received 1 praise so far. This is not enough to make Kuina like this, mainly because her hesitation in the end almost allowed the last killer to escape. At that time, she also questioned Luo Yun because Luo Yun killed the killer. Now her father praises Luo Yun for this, making Kuina feel stupid. The first day her father taught her swordsmanship, he warned her. The sword is a murderous weapon. Once you hold the sword, you will throw away the kindness and indecisiveness of a woman. Any hesitation and sympathy in the battle may lead to death. She had heard this sentence hundreds of times after studying swordsmanship for several years, but at the last moment, she felt sympathy for the enemy who wanted to kill her. If Luo Yun hadn't spoken out in the end, she would have let the killer go. As a result, Kuina was only annoyed. Looking at the apprentices and disciples in the room, Koshiro reminded again, this matter is only known to the people in this room. After everyone leaves, you cannot leak a word. You must forget this matter from your heart. If you meet someone who asks, according to what Luo Yun prepared. You also know the consequences if it is discovered, so everyone must keep the secret 100%, and no one can mention it. Yes, everyone responded in unison. Okay, you all go back and rest. Don't practice for these 2 days. Take good care of your body first. A gentle smile appeared on Koshiro's face again, and he narrowed his eyes and waved his hand, indicating that everyone could leave. Luo Yun stood up. A movement of his body touched the wound, and the pain that had been mild became severe again. Especially after applying medicine, the effect of the medicine made the wound more painful. He called to Zoro who was getting up and said, Zoro, help me down. I don't, you go alone. Zoro rolled his eyes. He is in a bad mood right now. If Luo Yun hadn't called him a wanderer, he would have followed him to buy food this time. Now he wants to punch Luo Yun in the face that deserves a beating, and he also wants me to hold him up. Thinking too much. Little brother, big brother is already like this, you can't do this, Luo Yun said with a grin. You. Hearing Luo Yun mention brother again, Zoro became even more angry, clenched his fists and glared at Luo Yun. Luo Yun didn't seem to see Zoro's angry gaze, shook his head and sighed. Hey, the younger brother doesn't even help the elder brother, you are making the elder brother very cold. Han Shin, you idiot. Zoro cursed in his heart, you are so shameless, you call me little brother in front of me every day and call yourself brother. Are you so shameless? Brother, I. Seeing that Luo Yun wanted to talk, Zoro finally couldn't bear it anymore. He gritted his teeth and walked to Luo Yun, put his arm around Luo Yun's shoulders, and lifted him up hard. When the wound was involved, Luo Yun grimaced in pain, but still kept a smile on his face. Let's go, brother. Zoro's mood immediately improved and he smiled softly. The strength in his hands was not weak. The harder he applied, the more pain Luo Yun felt. Okay, let's go, Luo Yun smiled through gritted teeth. The two of them walked out of the door like this. Seeing how interesting these two people were, everyone in the room couldn't help laughing. Everyone said goodbye one by one and Koshiro left. When Kuina was about to leave, Koshiro called out to Kuina. The smile on his face disappeared, and he changed from the gentleness before, and said seriously, Kuina, do you know where you went wrong this time? Kuina turned around, knelt down, lowered his head and admitted his mistake. Father, I should not forget your teachings, forget that the sword is a murderous weapon, and should not have any sympathy when dealing with the enemy. Seeing that Kuina knew the mistake he had made, Koshiro's face softened slightly. Seeing Kuina filled with regret, Koshiro found it difficult to express the lesson that came to his lips. Sighing, he raised his hand and said, Get up. You are just a child after all. You have not experienced many things. You still don't understand. I shouldn't be so strict with you. No. Kuina shook her head and refused, saying seriously, Father, I was wrong and not qualified to stand up. Although I am a child, Luo Yun can do it, and I should do it too. My father told me this sentence on the first day I practiced swordplay, and he has always said this to me, but when I actually faced the enemy, I hesitated and sympathized. This is a mistake that I absolutely should not make. Koshiro is serious about his daughter because of Luo Yun, but Koshiro doesn't know what to say. Could it be that he told Kuina that Luo Yun is different and you can't compare with him? Who knows what the competitive daughter will do? Now it seems that Luo Yun has become Kuina's curse. Finally, someone can suppress Kuina. I just don't know if this is a good thing. Forget it, at least it's a good thing now. As for the rest, time will tell. His face turned serious, and Koshiro said solemnly, Kuina, do you know why I said this to you on your first day of sword training? My father must have had the same experience. Kuina is smart and has already guessed some things. Yes, Koshiro nodded and told a story. About 40 years ago, your grandfather ran away from the family and came to East Blue, where he built a dojo and gave birth to me. Grandpa's swordsmanship was strong and his sword-making skills were superb. Many people came here because of his fame, and a village was slowly built here. Grandpa named it Shimotsuki. I grew up in the Shimotsuki village. But 20 years ago, I went to sea and went to the Grand Line to find my own clan. After 4 years of ups and downs, I finally found the Shimotsuki family that my grandfather left. But at that time, the country where my family lived was stolen by conspiracy. For the future of the country, and in order to wait for the adults who would inherit the country to appear, some people and I began to resist. I faced countless powerful enemies without hesitation. At that time, I had a group of partners who could put our lives at risk for each other. We fought against these powerful enemies that invaded our homeland for our dreams and beliefs. During the battle, a partner and I faced an enemy. He was very strong, and the two of us worked together to defeat him. When we were about to behead him in the end, he begged me for mercy. I hesitated. At this time, he suddenly Bouchi stabbed me with a knife, and my friend blocked the knife for me with his life. I killed the enemy, but my friend also fell in my arms. Because of my hesitation, not only did I almost kill myself, but I also killed my partner. Quote. At this point, Koshiro paused, his voice was low, and his eyes flashed with tears of regret even after 16 years. This was Kuina's father's emotion that she had never seen in her memory. Kuina was surprised and listened to every word carefully. She had never known that her father had this past, and she had never heard her father mention it in the slightest. Koshiro continued, the enemy is too powerful. The master who should inherit the country has not returned yet. No one in the entire country is his opponent. We failed. Only a few people escaped, and I was one of them. Since that incident, my swordsmanship has improved greatly, but what's the use? My dead companions cannot be resurrected, and I vow not to fight with a sword again for 20 years. Then we fled all the way, dying and scattering, and finally only your mother and I returned to the ashram and gave birth to you. Quote. Kuina was extremely shocked. She didn't expect that her father's past was like this, and that her father was not from Shimotsuki village. Shimotsuki village was established because of her grandfather, and there was such a secret in it. Looking at the shocked Kuina, Koshiro said, I originally waited for you to grow up before telling you about these things, but something like this happened today, so I decided to tell you first. After this experience, you will probably know many things too. I have my own considerations and thoughts, and I have some things to say to you. But one thing you must remember is that the sword is a murderous weapon. When you hold the sword and face the enemy, you cannot have the slightest hesitation or sympathy. Otherwise, in the end, you are likely to kill more than just yourself. Sympathy for the enemy is cruelty to myself and my friends. I understand, father, I won't make this kind of stupid mistake again. Kuina put her hands on her knees and nodded seriously. She had long been extremely upset, and when she heard what her father said, she vowed never to hold back again. Little did he know that this extraordinary day would shape a female swordsman who would be feared in the future. Okay, you go and have a rest early. Don't practice sword practice these 2 days. It's the time when your bones are growing and it's easy to hurt your body. Seeing that it was getting late, Koshiro gave some instructions and waved his hand for Kuina to retreat. Father, please rest early. Kuina stood up and left. Just as she was about to go out, she suddenly stopped and turned around and asked, Father, why is the village named Shimotsuki? In my life experience. Koshiro didn't answer Kuina right away. He hesitated for a moment before giving an answer that wasn't an answer. One day, when you go to the New World and have the opportunity to enter a country called Wanokuni, you will know. There was a snowstorm all night last night, and when it dawned the next day, the sky and the earth were all white, and the earth seemed to have been covered with a snow-white carpet overnight. A room somewhere in the dojo. Warm sunlight breaks in through the gap in the slightly opened window, jumps on the floor tiles, and sprinkles on the head of the bed. The girl lying on the bed made a slight sound. After a while, the girl slowly opened her eyes, which were bright and shiny. The girl closed her eyes for too long, and the sunlight coming in from the window was a bit dazzling. The girl closed her eyes again, opened and closed them several times before she could adapt to the light. Standing up slightly, the girl looked around. Everything was unfamiliar. She raised her hand to rub her painful head. She remembered that she was chased by CP Cypher Pole, fell into the hillside, and then lost consciousness. Where is she now? CP Cypher Pole's cell. But this room was warm and homey, not like a prison cell at all. Click. At this moment, the door of the room was pushed open from the outside. The girl was subconsciously alert. She looked at the door and saw a child with his left hand wrapped in bandages and walking in with food in one hand. It was Luo Yun who came in. Luo Yun walked into the door and saw that the girl had woken up, and was stunned subconsciously. Then he put the food on the middle table and walked to the girl's side. Looking at the girl's alert look, Luo Yun showed what he thought was a gentle smile. You're awake, your face is rosy. It seems you're recovering well. There shouldn't be any big problems. I'll ask someone to check on you. Wait, kid. When the girl saw Luo Yun turning around to leave, she raised her hand and called out to Luo Yun. My name is Luo Yun. Luo Yun turned around and introduced himself. A flash of embarrassment flashed across the girl's face. She retracted her hand and asked, Luo Yun, where am I? Shimotsuki Village, Ishin Dojo. Dojo. The girl was shocked. She did not fall into the hands of CP Cypher Pole. In that situation, although she killed a large number of CP spies, she was also seriously injured and fell down the hillside. According to common sense, she must have fallen into the hands of CP. Why are you in the dojo? What is going on? Seeing the confusion on the girl's face, Luo Yun smiled and said, yesterday we happened to be resting at the foot of the hillside. You fell from the hillside onto our grain truck and we rescued you. Are those people chasing me? The girl asked quickly. The spies were right behind her at that time. If she fell, the spies would definitely catch up with her. After you fell, they chased you and tried to kill us as soon as they appeared. In order to survive, we had no choice but to get rid of them, Luo Yun said calmly. How is it possible? The girl was extremely shocked. Although most of the CP Cypher Pole personnel who were chasing her were killed by her, there were also many people who were chasing her, including many good ones. But such a group of well-trained CP Cypher Pole killers were actually killed by this kid in front of them. How could the girl believe it? He also said it so lightly, as if dealing with these killers was just a trivial matter. This injury, the girl said as her eyes fell on Luo Yun's bandage. The injury I sustained in yesterday's battle will be fine with just 2 days of rest. Luo Yun raised his bandaged left arm and smiled indifferently. You should have a good rest first. If you are hungry, the food here is still warm. I will ask the doctor to come over and take a look at you later. After saying that, Luo Yun turned around and walked out the door. Of course he wanted to ask the girl why she was being chased by CP Cypher Pole, but now that she had just woken up, it was not good to ask like this. Let's wait until tomorrow. As he was about to go out, Luo Yun suddenly realized that he didn't even know the person's name, so he turned around and asked. By the way, I still don't know what your name is. The girl hesitated for a moment, thinking that this place was remote and no one should know about her, so she said. My name is Nicole Robin. Luo Yun had already stepped out of the door with one foot and was about to step out with the other foot. When he heard the girl say his name, Luo Yun kicked his foot on the threshold and fell to the ground with a plop. Luo Yun, who fell to the ground, turned over and jumped up. He looked at the girl in shock and disbelief and asked again. What did you say your name was? Nicole Robin. Robin wondered why Luo Yun had such a big reaction when he heard her name. After being stunned for a long time, Luo Yun woke up and walked around the room, touching his head with his right hand, scratching his ears and cheeks, and muttering to himself. It's wrong, it's wrong. No, I can't say it's wrong, it's true for this time period. Nicole Robin should still be on the run at this time. As for whether she is in Grand Line Luo Yun, it is not certain, because according to the information in the anime, it only states that it will be 6 years before Nicole Robin joins Crocodile, and it does not say that Nicole. Where has Robin been? Although from this aspect, there is no problem with the time when Nicole Robin appears in East Blue, because at this time, Nicole Robin is still on the run. What Luo Yun couldn't figure out was that Nicole Robin was attacked, because if he didn't come out, Nicole Robin would definitely die, and there would be nothing to do next. In other words, his little butterfly broke in and made everything change quietly and invisibly. Only this statement can explain it all. Seeing Luo Yun shaking his head and nodding, and constantly saying some unintelligible words in his mouth, Robin asked in a low voice. Any questions? No problem. Luo Yun woke up from his reverie and realized that Robin was next to him. He quickly shook his head and turned to look at Robin seriously. Robin has changed a lot from what she was 10 years ago. She doesn't have that mature, royal sister style. Instead, she is a lively girl with a youthful air. All in all, Robin is only 18 years old now. It is indeed the most beautiful years for a girl. Dispelling some stray thoughts from his mind, Luo Yun looked at Robin seriously, with a thoughtful look on his face, and suddenly walked to the table next to him, moved a stool and sat down. In Robin's doubtful eyes, Luo Yun revealed Robin's identity without warning. Nicole Robin was put on a bounty when she was only 8 years old. The bounty was as high as 77 million Baileys. She was also called the son of the devil, and was the most wanted criminal in the world government. Hearing this, Robin's face suddenly changed. He could not keep calm. His eyes turned cold. He had no time to think about why the kid in front of him knew her identity so clearly. He subconsciously raised his hands to activate his ability. But after Luo Yun prepared to reveal Robin's identity, he had already predicted that this kind of scene would happen, and had already been prepared for it secretly. Seeing that Robin was thinking of taking action, Luo Yun was faster. There was a shuriken in his hand at some point, and he raised his hand to stab Robin. The sharp tip of the shuriken was pressed against Robin's neck. Stop moving, put your hands down, Luo Yun warned softly. Robin moved his hands for a moment, tilted his head back, and looked at Luo Yun in disbelief. The opponent had actually been guarding against her from the beginning, and judging from his movements, the opponent seemed to know exactly what moves she would use. Seeing Robin's hands stop moving, Luo Yun said again, I know your ability, Nicole. Robin, a paramesha, flower fruit, ability user, can make any part of the body bloom like a flower on anything within sight. Physical objects for attack or other purposes. It's not that scary if you just need to be prepared in advance, especially at close range. If you don't believe it, you can try to see if I can pierce your throat before you activate your ability. But I think you should not do this. With your current physical condition, you will not be able to escape regardless of whether you win or lose. Besides, I don't want to kill such a beautiful girl like you. When I was reading One Piece comics, Luo Yun liked Robin very much. When facing Robin, I couldn't help but make a few teasing remarks. Who are you? Robin couldn't figure out how the other party knew her abilities so well. Judging from the current situation, the other party was not a CP cipher pull person. Who are you? Robin stared at Luo Yun, not at all flustered by the sharp shuriken around his neck. I marveled in my heart that Robin had a strong mind. Luo Yun put down his shuriken and said, me. Just an ordinary apprentice in this dojo. Apprentice, it's impossible to know this. Robin looked up at Luo Yun. Facing Robin's gaze, Luo Yun smiled slightly and sat back on the chair. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. What I'm telling you is the truth. If you don't believe it, you can go out and ask any apprentice, Luo Yun said with a smile. The topic changed. Luo Yun said again, compared to this, shouldn't you explain what you are doing? The famous devil's son, Nicole Robin was offered a bounty of 77 million Baileys when he was only 8 years old. But it appeared in the weak East Blue, still near our remote village. What do you think? Robin asked with a slight smile. Luo Yun's face darkened. Take a guess. You have to guess. If I can guess it, I will ask you. Robin chuckled lightly and said, don't you know a lot of things? Why don't you even know this? Hearing this, Luo Yun rolled his eyes immediately. He could tell that this woman was deliberately playing tricks on him, just because he threatened her just now. Women are indeed petty and will retaliate, even a wise man like Robin cannot avoid this. I guess I can't guess, but I feel a little confused. As the only scholar who escaped from West Blue O'Hara, why did you, Robin, not go to the Grand Line, but to the weakest East Blue? Luo Yun asked curiously. The red line and the grand line form a cross and divide the world into 4 parts, which are the 4 oceans. Generally speaking, ordinary people will not run from one ocean to another, because there are only 2 ways to go from East Blue to West Blue, one is over the red line, and the other is through the calm belt. But the red line is so towering and steep that ordinary people cannot climb it. Except for the holy land of Mariajoy, there is no city or country. For hundreds of years, the only person to climb the red line and enter the holy land of Mariajoy by hand was the mermaid tiger. Of course, strong people or people with special abilities can also do this, such as the red-haired man who infiltrated Mariajoy to meet the 5 elders, and Sabo and his team who infiltrated Mariajoy to rescue the bears. For those who are capable of climbing the red line, they can choose the easier way through the calm belt. To ordinary people, the powerful sea kings in the calm belt are a huge threat, but to a certain extent, the sea kings are hardly a threat. Rayleigh swam directly across the calm belt, and Hawkeye floated across the calm belt in a coffin boat. If Robin wants to enter East Blue from West Blue, there is only one way. First enter the Grand Line, then cross the calm belt and enter East Blue. The risks involved are extremely huge. Luo Yun was curious as to why Robin took such a big risk to reach East Blue. For something very important, Robin replied calmly. What? Luo Yun asked again, actually having a guess in his mind. If I tell you about a stone, you won't understand it. I can only say that it is something very important to me. As for stones, there is only the text of history. Luo Yun had previously speculated that Robin could be asked to say something very important, other than the historical text, and it turned out to be true. But East Blue actually has a historical text. I had never thought of this. Speaking of it, it seems that most of the historical texts appear in the Grand Line, with very few scattered around, but of course it is not impossible. I remember that in the comics, Ohara has several pieces of historical text, and even Ohara scholars can decipher the meaning of this text. Unfortunately, it was destroyed by the Buster Calls sent out by the 5 elders, leaving only Robin, who can interpret this kind of text. His wandering thoughts were brought back, and Luo Yun asked curiously, "Have you found it?" Robin nodded and said, "I found it, but not long after I found it, I was caught up by those annoying guys, who followed me all the way here. If it hadn't been for you, I would have died at their hands. Speaking of which, you are my savior and I owe you my life." No, it's just a coincidence. He said it carelessly, but Luo Yun was extremely happy in his heart. Others' favor may be useless, but Robin was different. As the only one who can decipher the text on the historical text, Robin knows a lot of things, even the whereabouts of the 3 ancient weapons, Pluton, Poseidon and Uranus. Robin's favors are very useful. Next, Luo Yun and Robin continued talking for a long time. Luo Yun wants to get more information about the historical text from Robin, especially the part of East Blue, which is closest to him. Luo Yun wants to see the historical text. If he can control the historical text in his hands, it will naturally be better, alright. It's a pity that Robin seems to know Luo Yun's little thoughts. The relevant historical text is completely silent and does not give Luo Yun a chance at all. After chatting for a long time, the information Luo Yun obtained was limited and of little use. Instead, he was tricked a lot by Robin. By the time Luo Yun reacted, it was already too late. Luo Yun immediately said nothing more. Playing tricks with a smart woman like Robin is like making a deal with the devil and trying to take advantage of him. It boils down to 2 words. Madness. Luo Yun quickly stood up and said, "Stop talking, it's time to change your dressing. I'll find someone to come over and change your dressing. You can rest peacefully for the next 2 days. As for those who are chasing you, don't worry. Only a few people know that you are here." With that said, Luo Yun put the chair away and walked out the door. Before going out, Luo Yun suddenly thought of something, stopped and turned around to give instructions. By the way, this is just a peaceful village, and the dojo is full of ordinary apprentices. You'd better not show too much of some things, let alone talk about other things. Just treat yourself as an injured ordinary person. Thanks for watching, subscribe and support my channel.